I'd like to welcome our presenters, Ruth Allen from the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman and Jane Tyack from Barwon Water. Dominic Schipano was also scheduled to attend from the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, and regrettably he's unable to join us today. So now for a little bit of housekeeping. I invite you to update your name and include your organisation if you haven't already done so. We're recording today's session and we do plan to circulate it to the people who've registered to attend, and also we'll obviously circulate presenters' slide decks after the session as well. We'll be using, for question time, we'll be asking you to raise your hand, use the raise hand function and also the chat function on Zoom. And we have a little activity which we circulated today around about midday, and I'm just going to put that in the chat. So let me just check that that works. At least, no, it hasn't. Tom, could you see if you could put the QR code into that chat? We'll see. Let me just see if that one works. I don't think it's going to work. So, Tom, perhaps you can share your screen and the QR code and people could take a shot of that. Nope.
Coming out?
Yep, great. So today we've got an activity. We have asked to put a question out to you all, and you can use this QR code to respond to that question. So if you hold your camera now, everybody, hopefully with the new changes in restrictions, people have been using their using the QR code quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. You just hold the camera up to that QR code and that'll take you to our Slido, where we're asking you, what is the biggest challenge in supporting small business customers? And we'll come back to some of the responses that people have already sent through, but perhaps if you could jot down in Slido your thoughts on this, and we can come to it in about 5 minutes time. We'll join the conversation and have a bit of reflection on that. Thanks, Tom. Excellent. So the purpose of today's session of the series of workshops. So this is our third workshop in a series that we developed to help promote better practice support for customers during the coronavirus pandemic. Our first workshop looked at proactive communication, noting how critical it is to promote engagement with customers around any changes in their ability to pay. The second workshop explored what collection looks like when supply restrictions and debt collection proceedings are on hold. The aims of today's workshop are really to raise awareness around the challenges facing small business operators and explore effective approaches to engaging the small business community and identifying what support is most valuable to small business customers during coronavirus pandemic. And the driver for this workshop came out of the pandemic and subsequent changes in government and regulatory policy. So all of us recognise that many operators of small businesses have been hard hit by the pandemic, particularly those working in hospitality and tourism sectors. Small business operators were the focus of the National Cabinet principles, and in August we updated our customer service codes to temporarily extend hardship support to operators of small businesses. Through interviews with Victorian water businesses, we know that all businesses have extended various forms of payment support to non-residential customers. What we saw in the latest round of interviews in September was that there remains a high degree of variation among businesses on the nature and the level of support on offer. And so our aim in hosting this workshop today is to support businesses individually and as a sector, to expand on the options you currently draw on for assisting small business customers and referring these customers to additional support. So now we come to the results of the Slido poll. What is the biggest challenge in supporting small business customers? So Tom, are you able to find those results? and show what people are thinking so far. So these are some of the responses that we've had. So thank you for those. We can see the numbers climbing. So what are the biggest challenges? Recovering, meeting their expectations, developing relevant and useful programs to support and assist. Many are not billed directly. Yep. Or current relationships are with the property owner, in which many cases that's not the business owner. Absolutely. And budgeting for hardship, budgeting, water businesses themselves budgeting for hardship cases. And ensuring that we identify those that need need help, given many may not have been in the situation before, and they may not feel comfortable asking for help. Absolutely, and that there are limited support options to support non-residential customers. Certainly, different available options than residential customers. And so here, I think right now it'd be starting over and playing catch up. Many have been in touch with us and seen a decrease in income, but are building back up again. So that's where the catch-up's going to come in play. In many cases, just engaging with customers over the phone. I think right now, over the phone to advise of the assistance available. And are we breaching insolvency laws? And propping up an already failing business. Is that anti-competitive? And getting in contact with them when their business is closed, especially. Just can't quite see that, Tom, but that's a really, really good array of questions, especially. So commercial tenants, we've seen a few questions around that. Assisting businesses getting on their feet. So a lot of really good questions there, and I've seen through some of the slides, so I know that you'll get some really good responses to that, but also we've got a really good opportunity to spend some time with questions for our presenters, Ruth and Jane, today. So we are certainly not scrimping on the question and discussion time, and I hope and invite you all to make the most of that. Because we're using the Zoom function as well, that if you do put a question in chat, we'll certainly come to it. But if we do find that we're a bit stretched for time, then we can ask our presenters to come back with some reflections, and we can use that in the wrap up the following week as well. Thanks for that, Tom. So now I would just bring up my notes again. So I'll move to our first introduction of our first presenter. So I'd like to welcome Ruth to our forum today, all the way from Canberra. Thank you very much, Ruth. Ruth is a team leader at the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, and she is speaking on the challenges facing small businesses. So Ruth, you've owned and operated several businesses over 25 years, and you certainly understand the issues and difficulties small businesses deal with on a daily basis. You've said that as you grew your business, you really understood that studied the regulation and the compliance that you were working with. You undertook further education to enhance your business operations, and you completed a Master's of Bachelor Administration, which led to your lifelong learning, passion for learning and research. You believe that small business is an integral part of Australia, and you love being part of the office, and your role is assisting and advocating for small businesses. Ruth, we had a bit of a chat around some of the things that we've enjoyed and taking away from COVID, and you said that you're a real keen player of a variety of sports, but particularly you love being a spectator of the Collingwood Magpies. So I hope that you've got a good round of watching, even if you weren't able to attend the games. Jane, Ruth, you've said that you're happy to take questions as you go, so I'll keep an eye on the chat and the raised hands. And as I said, Sol, one of our team members, will help support you with the slides as we go.
Okay, terrific. So I think I might just start a bit more on my background. So 25 years small business ownership in Melbourne, bars and restaurants, and I went through an area, I'm not sure whether you're all in Victoria, but St Kilda was my hood. And as most people who knows the area knows that Fitzroy Street went through a downward turn, and it was shocking as a small business owner watching a business fall before your eyes. And mine wasn't before my eyes, but it was over 4 years, and Fitzroy Street sort of lost. I had a thriving, busy business, and it just went. And small business owners at the very start identify themselves as their business. And so I think that's one thing about small business owners that I can certainly give you insight on. It's you work, you live, breathe, and they are everything. So if your small business is struggling, usually you're struggling. So it's really important to recognise that in small businesses. There's usually no difference between the person and the work. In small business, it's just them. They live their life, it's everything. Staff are their family. So that's the way it is. So I certainly have this love of small business. When I finished up with my business, I wrote to our ombudsman and said, let me come and work with you. You do such good things. And that's how I ended up in Canberra rather than Melbourne. So I'll just give you a bit of background about what we do in our office. Totally interesting. We've got two parts. We advocate and we assist. And Advocate does all things that impact small business. So any regulation, any legislation, anything that comes along that we think is going to impact on business, we'll stomp and put our hand up and get Kate to get in front of the media. We'll write submissions. We'll do everything we can to change an impact on that legislation to support small businesses. And the assistance function, which is my area, I lead a team up here, as well as a team in Melbourne of 30 on the info line, and we assist businesses in dispute. So that can be anything. That can be with their water bill, that can be with their lease, that can be with a payment, that can be with a contract, and we try and do it all to avoid litigation. So our whole aim is, let's try and avoid litigation. There's too much stress, it costs too much, and no one really wins. It's just too much heartache. So it's all about, and I think this is a key thing that I'll get to along when I speak, assisting with dispute resolution and reaching a resolution. It's all about the vernacular you use, and I would encourage anyone dealing with any businesses is to change the vernacular from fixed positions on what people are after, but what are their needs, and therefore you can reach a resolution that both parties can get what they want, whether it be a business getting paid and someone else getting a supply. It's not about I'm right, you're wrong. It's about reaching a resolution that we can both live with here, and the critical in my role in assistance is what we do. So that's just a summary of the agency and what we do here. Now we'll just go into a bit of background in the next slide, please. Just a bit about small business. I mean, we can all do lots of statistics about small businesses. I think the most overwhelming thing for me is that they are the heart and soul of Australia. You employ people, the man down, the guy at the pub gives you your beer, you can tell him about your toothache. It brings community together. When I moved to Canberra, I made friends with Joe, who works in the local service station. It means nothing, but it meant something to me that I had this guy, Joe, that I said hello to every day. So many small businesses are those people that are saying hello to each other in the street, and they're so important for soul and community. And that's why they matter. That's, for me as a small business owner, watching people have babies, buy houses, do all that sort of thing was so critical, and it brings quality of life, and we want to support small businesses keep going, employing people, thriving, growing, and more small businesses open. It's just good for the soul. So that's just a bit of a small business snapshot there. Now if we can go on to the next one, in our role, we're called the Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. Family Enterprise is one of my favourite. I've always been in businesses with one of my brothers or ex-husband or whoever, and these are small family enterprises are just another version of small businesses, but it's just thrilling to watch businesses and when family are working together and creating that community. Again, it's just an extension of what small businesses are. Real people doing real things and making real difference. So that's a bit of background about why they're so important and why we need to support them. So COVID came along. So, I mean, this slide doesn't really say it, except the side that I would be looking at here, consumption and spending has fallen 56% since the start of 2020. These other stats don't really show what's happened out there, because there's been so many mechanisms put in place to support. And we all know that they're not going to last forever, but the JobKeeper, cash flow boost, and businesses just don't know where they're at. And, you know, I think through no fault of their own, which is such the difficult thing about the impact of this particular disaster COVID-19 has had on a small business, is it's through no fault of their own. If someone's in their small business is, buying clothes that are too expensive for them from their business, we know what's wrong. But no one could do anything about COVID. The forced closures, the forced restrictions on them were just devastating, and it's already hard running a small business. So many things, the carpet was pulled out from underneath them, and we have seen in our office here devastating times, and I'm sure Victoria and Melbourne has felt it a lot. My area that I was always in was in hospitality, and I know that I've had devastated friends. It's been heartbreaking. It's been really heartbreaking as someone who has to deal with small businesses, and heartbreaking trying to support small businesses when so much is at stake. And we're talking about people losing employees, losing houses potentially, not knowing what's happening with their business. Are they ever going to get started again? And so many goalposts have changed. So the support comes along in JobKeeper. What does that mean? My wages are all right, but when that's going to go, I don't know what it's going to mean. When I have to open up again and I have to distance everyone, can I earn enough revenue to make enough money to pay whoever? There's just so many questions that are coming round and round and round. So we won't know what the result of COVID is going to be for a long time now. And we certainly do know that a lot of businesses are going to fail. Excuse me. So these are the sort of things that are impacting on small business. Cash flow is an obvious one. Mental health, that I'll go into more later. Government support, what's happening, when's it slowing down, when's it stopping, that sort of thing. How businesses are meant to operate in this environment, excuse me. And I think we talked about hospitality. How do you operate? I mean, so many pubs and restaurants, so you can have 20 people in. They're licensed for 200. There's 20 people can't make anyone money. Rent and lease negotiations, by far the most disputes we had was about rent and lease. Now that gets referred to a state level, but again, similar to what Lucy was saying earlier, this was a cabinet code of mandatory code of conduct that was developed. Let's share the pain here. So rent and lease with landlords and tenants was really tough. The ones that were good were amazing. We had so many grateful small businesses out there when the landlord said, let's share this pain. I won't charge you any rent. You're being forced out. When you come good, you start paying rent. I mean, incredible, great stories that came out of that. What business model operates in the COVID-19 environment? An obvious one is businesses being able to go to online. We're really big on pivoting here. So, and I think, and hopefully I'll touch on that as well, that's one of the things coming out of COVID. What has it meant? What has it meant for you, and what can you do, and what can you take advantage of, if anything, in this dreadful environment? And rethinking your business model is an obvious one. People that do delivery, people that do online, my favorite one is the gin person that turned the gin making into hand sanitizer. I mean, there's brilliant ideas out there. There's so many things. So what happened? What can you do in that environment? Viability, so hard to tell. There's no doubt that a small business that was already on low margins that has been forced to have all these closures and can't operate probably won't last, and that's devastating. So how do we do all this, treating the small business owner with dignity, with making sure that they don't lose their sanity as well as their business? Delay in payments. We've always had a big issue about people delaying in their payments, particularly big business towards small business. We've watched those stats, we've watched those figures go way out. So a lot of the time that small businesses can't pay, they might not be paid. So that's just the flow on and flow on. And of course the fantastic tax issues, which are scary for anyone at the best of times. And I must say that the ATO have been brilliant during this whole COVID thing, and being very supportive with small businesses and delaying and all that sort of thing. So they're the main areas, and I'm sure there's more. This is just a little payment time graph. No, just go back to the payment time graph, that'd be great. There. So I think this is fascinating, and that the payment times in October were in 2020, we're 157% higher than October 2019. And that's just a little stat to show that if someone's not paying you, they're probably not getting paid, and it's just going on and on. It's a known issue, and the COVID certainly hasn't helped. So that's just a little stat there. We can go into the next slide. I think when we talk about our office, some of the things that we've been doing, I got that the wrong way around, but I'm going to go straight into that one. Mental health. So we know from our office that at least 90% of businesses that come to us in dispute at the moment have an overlay of mental health. It's so difficult for businesses like yours, like anyone that's in any support, anyone that's trying to support a small business, is to talk about their mental health, what's keeping them up at night, how they're coping, and it's a big thing. So it's really critical for people that are talking to small businesses to really understand that small business, where they're at, how they're feeling, and what they're coping with. So we know that cash flow is a big one. It's interesting, I've just had a meeting with ATO, and they've got this great digital cash flow kit coming out at the end of the week. I think it'd be really interesting for anyone that's supporting small businesses to get on board with that. Lucy, I'm happy to send you a link afterwards when that comes out. They've been working on it for a couple of years. It's so thorough and will help so many businesses so that they can work it out themselves how they are with their cash flow. So we'll just go, I've got all these slides a little bit mixed up. If we can just go to the next one, please. I think this was really what Lucy actually asked me to talk about rather than anything else. And so I thought I'd better throw it in on a slide. Lucy talked to me about how water businesses are very good at dealing with residents, and I saw that come up in the comments earlier. And we would say, as an ombudsman's office, it's really critical to provide small businesses with as many of the same concessions that you would to residents. Really, small businesses are just people at the other end of it. There's so much difference between small businesses and big businesses. Small businesses make a difference between big businesses often can just be numbers, not that they all are, but small businesses, there's a person behind it. So if you can give a concession to a small business, you can make a difference to what they're eating, how they're living, and so much more. If a small business isn't able to pay you, they're probably not paying. They're probably not being paid themselves. And I think a really critical thing is we want to keep small businesses viable. Any taking a hardline approach won't help anyone. So what we want to try and do is be as good to as many small businesses to keep a healthy herd going along. We want to try and extend what we can to small businesses, because if there's any chance of them getting through this, it's going to be with that support. A hard line isn't going to help the small business, but isn't going to help you, isn't going to help anyone either. And obviously, like it's obvious for anyone that talks to me that I'm passionate about small businesses. So much of this is not their fault, and I even get a bit upset when I talk about this. There's so many businesses that are just doing it so hard. It's not their fault. They feel bad anyway. They're probably fighting at home. They've got so much against them. Treat them with dignity. All this has happened to them. So I think that's the most important thing, is treating the small businesses with dignity and having the conversation with them about what their options are, I think is the most important thing. And I just need to get on to the next page, please. We've got a great link. I'm not selling anything here. I've got two links here. This is support services for business, Aspefio, us. You can go anyone if they're looking. Can I get back to you in a minute, Kay, on that one? I will answer that one. It's a good question. Or should I answer this now, Lucy? What would you like me to do?
Yeah, happy for you too. We've still got a bit of time, so yeah, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, so that was, do I think it should be mandated that property owners must support business tenants through a crisis? whether that's pandemic, fire, flu, for as many good stories we've heard, there's been almost as many, lots of bad ones, absolutely. I mean, I think the mandatory code of conduct was such a great start, and it really, really helped. But it wasn't rules and it wasn't law. The guidelines behind it were brilliant, though. We're in this together. Landlords are so critical to a tenant. If they're not getting the rent, they're not going to. They're going to have to go and get someone else in. That's no good for anyone. One, we want the community happening and all the rest of it. I absolutely think property owners should support their business tenants through a crisis, and I think this mandatory code of conduct enabled them to do it. We had so many successes. There was mediations all across the state that did really well. But I have to say that there were some bad tenants out there as well. So we got a small business owner that might have been a landlord. That doesn't mean they're fat cat with 1 million properties. It's just saying and can afford to say no rent. It's got to be that working in together. What can we do here? What are your needs? What are my needs? And I'm going to go back again to that vernacular. How can we reach a resolution here? Not I'm right, you're wrong. The whole right or wrong needs to go out the way. How can we reach a resolution? Okay, you can get a waiver from the bank for that. You've got to pay this, right? I can get a bit of online sales in here. I think I could manage this. What about if we start for that? Or can I give you 5% of turnover? All sorts of stuff about reaching a resolution. But I certainly believe that property owners should be less fat cattish to small businesses through crisis. Absolutely, fire, flood, pandemic, all of them. And maybe, just maybe, that might be something positive that we're getting out of this one. I hope that answers that one. So just a list of referrals for people. As Spefio, we're always happy to take any referrals, just because we know a lot about other agencies. We know how to talk to small businesses. So many of us have worked and owned our own small businesses. State small business commissions are really similar to us, but they operate on a state level. And the thing about state small business commissions, particularly in leasing and rent, that's all done on a state level. So that's the avenue to pursue. Mental health, Beyond Blue, crucial for anyone that's experiencing mental health. If they say it, they're obviously in a bad way. I'm so sorry, I've been sick. A small business financial counselling service. Again, Lucy, I'm happy to give you this number. I'm on a committee this is actually a small business financialing bushfire service, but they're able to help small businesses. And so many businesses, as I said to you earlier, if they can't pay a water bill, if they can't, struggling with other bills, there's probably a whole host of bills out there that they can't pay. Getting them off to a small business financial counselling service it could be such a weight off their shoulders. It's such a great referral for anyone in any business. Do you need help? I used to have a regular customer who did a study. He started Odyssey House in Australia, and he did a paper on providing business cards to people that worked at the supermarkets, to people that worked at hairdressers, and people worked at the pubs. And if you had someone that was coming in a bit upset, you say, oh, you look like you need a bit of help, here's a card. It lifts the mood of the community. So being able to have a referral service for these small businesses can make a huge difference. And then we've got a great access on My Business Health. And I think I've got a page on that next if I can get these slides right. And it's another great resource for businesses, not just in struggling with their business, but struggling with their mental health. So I think that's all my slides, but I've surprised myself. I think I've changed them around a little bit. I'm absolutely happy to take questions. I'm sorry that probably didn't appear to be that orderly. I tend to just talk a lot, but please ask me questions if you'd like.
Thanks. I will. So I invite people to either raise their hand or put a note in the chat function. Bruce, just to get things kicked off, I'm just been looking through some of the questions and comments that people put in the Slido earlier on, and a big theme that's coming through is that in many instances the relationship is that the water business has is with the property owner, and it's the small business is the tenant. And you obviously, the experience at the Ombudsman is that you do work with tenants and the landlords and the small business. Can you provide sort of any advice around what things might really sort of cut through it and support that discussion with landlords, for example, who was perhaps...
So it's an interesting one, that, I mean, again, it's whoever's feeling the pain. I mean, one would hope that the tenant is talking to the owner about where they're at, and then the owner is doing some of the negotiating for them with these water businesses. Again, we can have good and bad tenants and landlords. That, I mean, we work a lot with franchising, and a lot in franchising, the landlord is the one who's the tenant. So the franchisee doesn't even get the ability to be able to negotiate the rent. So, I mean, I would say, you know, we would be encouraging the communication to pass on anything. If the landlord is being good, we would ask them to be passing on that benefit to the tenant. So it is both communication. Hopefully, if the relationship's good between the tenant and the owner, then hopefully the owner can get to negotiate something good with you. But then they might not be able to. So the owner may be fantastic and just say, look, I can't negotiate anything more, but I'm happy to pay this for you. That might happen. There's no straight line in any of this. There's so many contributing factors along the whole way. What can you do? What are you after? How can we help? Can they help along the way? I think the most important thing is getting that conversation happening and communicating.
Yep.
So I've just got something for Cameron from Barwon Water.
So maybe I'll just invite Cameron perhaps to ask that question to you, Ruth, because you might sort of find that, Cameron, you might have some sort of bits and pieces to add to that as well.
Sure. Yes. Hi. Hi, Ruth. Thanks for the presentation. It's fantastic. Yeah, I was certainly just interested, you know, in your perspective, given, you know, the number of small businesses that you talk to, you know, whether you'd identified, you know, certain industries that you would say were more acutely impacted through the pandemic, and I guess alternatively, you know, are there industries that potentially have seen less impact, or, you know, we hear stories of some industries that have actually been able to, you know, identify growth opportunities in their business. Yep.
So I think it's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, these are the things you don't even think about. I mean, we spoke to, just after our bushfires, we were speaking to someone in Queensland, and because we were trying to learn about the bushfires, this is just pre-pandemic, in that brief little time there, and some of the industries that get really impacted and some that don't become fascinating. So in Queensland, I think they talked about afterwards, and I know, and I'll go on to the pandemic, but everyone with their insurance all got new cars. So in some particular areas, all got new cars. So the mechanics had no work for 2 years after that. So that's sort of interesting, isn't it? These things that you don't think of. So, I mean, it's obviously, Lucy talked about industries that have been hit as the ones that have been forced to close, that don't have any other avenue. One that we've just found is dreadful is obviously the travel agent industry. They've just been more than 100% down, because they have already passed on money to the third party provider. So they've got to give back the money to the customer that they've already passed on. So they're over 100% down. So travel agents, hotels, all that sort of stuff. Industries that have thrived have been interesting. Florists have done very well, in our opinion, and what we've seen a lot. Deliveries, some deliveries, home deliveries, of course. Markets have done very well. Obviously, it depends where you are. Victoria and Melbourne, I don't know. I don't know much about that. But we've had up here, definitely, the markets have done really well. A lot of supermarkets have done really well because so many people have cooked at home. So it's interesting. You go, and whenever you hear this, you go, oh, of course. But you just don't think, how does that pan out to industry? So there's no doubt that some industries have done really well. Obviously, bottle shops have done well. And who's done really badly. But, you know, we're so admiring of those people that have pivoted and come up with a new way of doing businesses. And of course, we have to all be very pro digital and getting your business online, and what can you do out of that. So does that answer some questions to you? I mean, I'm more in the story rather than the actual logistics, but that's what we're hearing from businesses that we're in touch with.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's really good insight. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. And so I'll probably stop sharing now, and that'll just let Ruth have a bigger room, look at the room. Thanks for that. Ruth, I was really interested in around, I guess, you talked about the vernacular of small business. And one of the things that over the last 9 months, water businesses have been doing is really exploring ways of engaging, communicating and engaging, and having that sort of proactive engagement. So when it comes to small business, you talked a bit about the language, but can you talk about, you know, how your ombudsman business goes around engaging with business customers? When are they available? What have you guys learned around that level of engagement and being proactive?
Yeah, so we've got a number of obviously industry groups that we deal with. We have a number of small businesses that contact us, stakeholder groups, and we've got a big reach. I mean, our ombudsman, Kate Carnell, she's on the media all the time, and she's forever saying, please reach out. We have surveys, so we reach out to them. We just have dealt with so many small businesses over the time and know so many different people that we've got to reach for everything in every area. Through our state small business commissioners as well, we work strongly with the ATO, we work strongly with ACCC. So we've got a diverse and broad range of small businesses that we deal with. And our frontline people, I mean, I just think the frontline people are extraordinary source of information. And we've got these 30 info line people that work on our info line. I meet with them, do training sessions with all the time. I meet with them at least once a week because they are the people that are dealing with people right now. So many people in government, they find out 2 years later what's happening, whereas you're dealing with people right now. So the people that are answering phones, the people that are talking to people, what are you hearing right now? That's what's happening. That's actually what's happening out there. And you need to get on it right now because we all know it changes so quickly. And I think, Lucy, when I was talking about vernacular, I'm really important, not for small businesses to use vernacular, because we've got to be able to sort of not imitate, but we've got to be able to respond to small businesses, whatever level they're on. If they're limited English, we've got to be able to respond in basic words. But let's not be caught up on technical words when we're talking to small businesses, so as plain as possible. But when I talk about vernacular, I'm talking about someone helping small businesses. We not talk about you're wrong, you're right. We talk about what can we reach a resolution here, and just sort of leading it to a positive, more empowering for a small business, something that they have a choice about. What can we help you with? What options do you see can resolve this? What options are for you that could resolve it? And, you know, how can we reach this resolution? Not how do we get you to be right and me to be wrong, because that doesn't work with anyone.
And so I do invite other people. I'm looking for raised hands, and so I don't want this sort of end up being a conversation between Ruth and I. So if you do have other questions, but I was really interested in that payment delays table that you showed, Ruth. What sort of conversations might call centre staff be needing to have when you've got the reality is that the person they're speaking with has got very significant payment delays? What sort of language, are there any cues or flags that you could sort of indicate that would separate this group of, you know, a common experience relative to residential customers who might be on a wage, for example?
Yes. Well, I suppose it's just understanding, understanding the holistically where they're at. I mean, understanding what type of business. I think the most crucial question for someone at a call centre is to be understanding what sort of businesses they're dealing with. Are they doing work and then invoicing and getting paid, or are they a cafe that's getting paid immediately? Understanding what sort of business and talking to them about it. Oh, that must be tough. You would have been forced to close. Oh, did you have to close for very long? How are you going now? What are you finding you're picking up? What do you see is going to happen? Are you still getting JobKeeper? Talking all this and creating a conversation about what's happening, and to get someone, are they having an idea of it? Is it coming out? What's it looking like here? What are you doing? And then if someone, so people are so overwhelmed, If you're not doing anything, can you go and see your accountant? Have you had a cash flow analysis done? Is there a small business advice? Can you go and do, what can you go and do? But that all comes from a conversation. So we know the ATO are a friendly creditor at the moment. We don't know how long that's going to be. They've been very supportive, but it's like, it's getting someone, if you can, if someone on the call centre can at least let that small business understand what are the next best steps they can take after they get on the conversation, know they've got a bit of leeway, and what are the next best steps, and keep in touch, then you've done something. If you can find, if you'll just talk to them on the phone about a list of the things that they need to consider that maybe they haven't, then you've helped. And treating them with dignity and treating them with, let's move forward here. What options can we do it? This is what we're requiring. Obviously, there's an obligation under the contract we've got. Where do you know, that sort of thing.
We will get a chance to hear from you again, Ruth. We'll come back to you at the end where we've got a chance to sort of have a few reflections and a bit of a wrap up. But is there any final question just on some of the content that Ruth has spoken to, or anything else that you'd like to hear about, or perhaps we could circulate in the wrap up? So far we've got the ATO toolkit that you mentioned. You also mentioned the financial counselling link, so
yes,
certainly forward that. Was there anything else that people mentioned I'd like a bit of a follow up on? Well, feel free to put that in the chat.
Can I just ask, Ruth, is the small business financial counselling, is that nationwide?
it is. So for years, there's only been, we used to call it the 007 number. It's 1-800-007, and it's for individuals for financial counselling. There was never anything for small business. Now this agency got some funding at the bushfire, when the bushfire came out. So they're actually called the Small Business Financial Bushfire Counselling Service. They're a team of incredibly trained people, and I'm on a committee for the inaugural committee, just a sort of a steering committee. And I rang up the woman that runs it and I said, can I give out your number? And she said, absolutely. So they've expanded into more areas. I would, just for someone to speak to a financial counsellor, to talk through where they're at, to be honest and open, even if at the end of it that they get told, look, I think you should just fold, to make that decision rather than in 20 years' time and lose the house and lose the marriage and have all the kids never talk to you again. Face up to things. You know, nothing's as bad until, you know, well, maybe it is. But yes, it absolutely is national. So I'll absolutely provide that to Lucy to pass it on.
Sorry, I've got my kids walking around in the background starting to make noise, so I keep going onto mute here. So thank you so much, Ruth, and as I said, we'll come back to you towards the end of the session. I invite you all just to take a 2-minute stretch before the next part. I'm going to just blank my screen and just go and check in with my kids now that they've come back from school and make sure they've got snacks and are self-sufficient for the next 45 minutes. So I'll join you back at 2 minutes. Take that time to stand up, have a stretch, and I'll see you again at 3:49. Welcome back. So I'll just wait for people to join us again and make sure that Jane, you're available. Great. Okay. So thank you very much for that. So I would like to move to the second part of our session today. Jane Tyzak from Barwon Water, Manager for Customer Experience at Barwon Water, will speak to us now on the work that she's involved in supporting small business during the coronavirus pandemic. So Jane, you're currently leading a program of change in relation to customer experience and support at Barwon Water, and you're focusing on solving business and customer problems through strategies and initiatives that are focused around new ways of working. And so since COVID and not being out and about, we've been talking around a few things that we've been doing that have been different since COVID. You've invested in a new coffee machine and you're developing your barista skills through coffee making and latte art. So nice work on that. I hope that one day we can sort of have some lovely leaves on top of a coffee together. Jane's also designed your ideal kitchen layout and renovations that are close to completion. So all the best with that over the coming months. Now, Jane, you've got a presentation to us, you've got some slides, and you've mentioned also that you're happy to take questions as you go. So I will keep an eye for the raised hands. We'll also both keep an eye out perhaps for the chat, and I'll let you know if there's one, and we can either pause for that or come to a couple of breaks between the slides. But Jane, I'll hand over to you.
Great, thank you, Lucy. I thought I'd throw the kitchen in there in case you hear a few bangs in the background. So I thought that'd act as a good segue. And I must say, I think at the start, I fluked a couple of good latte art images, got a bit of confidence, and it hasn't really progressed from there. So, I peaked probably about month 3 of working from home. So thank you.
For your presentation, Solly, you there? I can share it from my screen. Oh, yep, lovely. Sorry, go ahead, Jane.
Well, good, thank you. I would actually just like to begin by also acknowledging the traditional owners of the country on which we meet today, and pay to their respect to their elders, both past, present, and emerging. For this session today, as I know Lucy's already given a bit of an intro, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off by covering off a little bit about Barwon Water for those people that that don't know much about us. I'm then going to touch on our customers, and in particular focus in and around our small business customers and some of the insights and research that we've leveraged to inform our approach to support small business at this time. Following this, I will pause for questions, but in the meantime, please feel free to pop them in the chat. And then what I'm going to do following that is I'll walk you through our service response and what we are actually doing in response to that research and what we did already have in train, and also what we've experienced to date in terms of the support uptake and outcomes. And then following this, at the end, I'm going to touch on a couple of other initiatives which are more around water efficiency, but also providing that much needed support as well. So, and then at the end, absolutely an opportunity that we can circle back and provide some questions again. But as I mentioned, if there is something that does come to mind, please pop that in the chat. So just starting off to the next slide, it'd be good just to cover off there a little bit about us. So for those that don't know, so our region stretches from Little River, which is next to Werribee in the western suburbs of Melbourne, across to Colac over in the west, up to Meredith, which is sort of, if you were driving up from Geelong to Ballarat, you sort of hit there, and then over to Apollo Bay, so down on the water on the coast. And of course, we've got the Bellarine Peninsula as well. Some of the other well-known locations include Great Ocean Road, which I'm sure all of you would be familiar with, and coastal townships of Lorne and Torquay are also within our footprint. Like many of you, Barwon Water delivers high quality water and sewer services, and for us this is delivered to more than 3,000 customers. And in the holiday period, as you would expect, we do reach a bit of an influx of customers during that time, and people, and that peaks up to around 550,000 people. So it does swell up over those summer periods. Within that, from a customer perspective, in particular around small business, we're looking at around 11,000 customers that do fit in within that group. Of which is, we would say, our data isn't great, and it was interesting listening to Ruth and really putting a human element to that, but really got me thinking around, and I'll touch on this, but what more can we do to make sure that we're reaching out? But based on the data and what we do know of those 11,000, we do suspect that a large proportion of those are in fact small business. And I'm going to talk through how it is that we approach actually identifying those customers, and that definition, importantly as well, of small business, which we struggled with for a little bit, but I'm going to talk about that. So just next on our the next slide there for Strategy 2030, I wanted to briefly reflect on this in terms of its importance around how it really sets the scene for us. Whilst at Barwon Water, we've always had a strong focus on supporting customers, but it's really through the Strategy 2030, it's provided us, I guess, with an inspiration to improve on what we're doing, and really making sure that there's that strong benefit for the customer, but also the region, and hence why I will touch on the efficiency piece as well. With this, though, I guess really what has been changing very much since I've been there, and I know it was happening before then, we are changing in terms of how we are approaching improving our services and our products, and we're listening to customers, and we're listening to customers more and more, and we're tackling some of those problems and business problems head on, with the ultimate aim to really make sure that we are delivering that value, which does centre back and circle back to this as well. So yeah, so thank you. We might move on to that next slide. So our customers. So with that, a little bit about them. We're looking, as I mentioned before, around 11,000 customers that do operate a range of businesses across various industries. This cuts across many, including tourism, agriculture, retail, and manufacturing. And yet, obviously, whilst not unique to our region, many of these industries have been impacted, and we're very aware of that. Whilst restrictions have eased, and we've done a lot of work to try and anticipate how we can best support, it has been challenging with that, and we are obviously seeing a lot of these businesses are now starting to scale back up, but we are expecting this to be a slow recovery, and one that will need support. So that's certainly what we're working with just at this point in time. And our aim moving forward is actually to continue to deliver on the services that meet their needs, but also making sure that we're checking in and realigning that what we are delivering is continuing to meet essentially what the customers need and want, but also their expectations in terms of how this is done. So we'll just go on to that next slide. So in terms of how we have approached supporting small business, we actually did have a number of existing programs and customer research that we were fortunate to be able to leverage, and we added to that as well. So just as a starting point there, so our customer support programs, as I mentioned before, Barwon Water was already heavily invested in supporting our customers, but we're really fortunate through the last pricing submission. And for the next pricing period, we've also got an extra $2.5 million that we are dedicated to supporting our customers over that 5-year period. So with that, we did pull together a dedicated customer support program, which is really aimed at improving and expanding on our hardship support. So that was really central. And as part of that, we undertook a significant amount of research of customers in terms of what support they are looking for and the support that they need. Ongoing, and as part of that research piece, we actually engaged with 3 levels at a sort of a local, regional and national level of different customer groups and stakeholders, and we've kept that relationship ongoing as well. So we continue to circle back with that group and those customers just to check in on if we are on the right track and how it is that we might need to pivot and adapt. And that's something that we have done and will continue to do. The customer experience strategy, this for us, this kicked off, was 2019, we finished this. And it was through this process our customers told us what they're looking for, and it's really about being personal, being reliable, accessible and responsive. So with that, these are our service commitments that we now use to shape our roadmap, and we're using that to really focus on building out our maturity in this space across a range of different actions that sort of cut across your typical people, process and system related. So that's definitely in flight and definitely helping us in this space now, and I'll talk to that shortly. Following that with benchmarking and COVID-19 support. So for us, again, sort of kicking back and around that Feb, March and April, and even ongoing, we've undertaken, initially it was a heavy amount of sort of benchmarking, and have continued to circle back and have a look at who else is providing what services for these customers, what other support is being provided, the different levels of government, such as stimulus schemes and packages and so forth, and really just making sure that what we can provide is complementary to that. And also using that benchmarking and that research to also anticipate what extra or what else might be needed from us, and how is it that we could even partner up and provide a broader level of advocacy or support within the Geelong region, because we do have strong, in the Barwon region as well, sorry, because we do have strong connections in with the community and more broadly as well. So where are those opportunities? So that's something that we continue to have a look at. Voice of customer. So this was an outcome from the customer experience work, really important piece of work. We capture feedback from various touch points, including complaints, and we use all these insights to inform service and product improvement. So really, really critical in this space. We get some really good early insight through customer verbatim that we can pick up and analyse and then go in and dig a little bit deeper and so forth as needed. And finally, customer personas, journey mapping and segmentation. We've established a set of personas that represent our customers. We actually have about 9 in total. Within that, we've got roughly around half of those do represent business and small business. We've got Tony, the cafe owner from Geelong West, and a few others that are in there as well. But we actually use them as a design tool, and they've become a very important part of our training with our staff, and also particularly not just training around soft skills and customer support training, but it's also around designing and improving services. And it's a great way for us to be able to put ourselves in our customers' shoes and really identify what it is that we could do to really make sure that we're at best hitting the mark. But we don't just do that in isolation. There are other things that we also do. So for instance, with the journey mapping, like we undertook with our customer support programs, a range of customer journeys, in particular for businesses, plumbers, that type of thing, but also just other hairdressers we had in there. We did have some cafe owners, but also people that are out sort of more agricultural, sort of farm-based as well. So there's a number of journey maps that we did to also, again, recognise what we're doing well, but also what we could improve on. And finally, just on that with the segmentation, really important tool, and in particularly with this, and I'm going to move on to this in a moment, but this was important for us with regards to when we need to streamline our approach. And in particular, what I'm going to focus on today is what we did with this small business. So customer segmentation, I am going to pause after this slide for some questions, so just a bit of a heads up on that one. So following on, as I said with before, with this response and customer support response, the customer segmentation is really quite critical because, to put it out there, I mean, our data isn't, I guess, that great for identifying what would be considered a small business if we were to look at definitions such as the ATO. So the ATO, for instance, is a definition which is driven around financial returns. We don't have that sort of information. So we were looking at other ways in which we could identify, you know, who is a small business customer. So that's when we undertook this approach. So we set out to learn more about our small business customers. And with that, we went through, looked at the data. For us, it was about identifying, we touched on this before actually, which was interesting. So we have around, roughly around 160 different property types in our systems, which gave us insight into the different types of businesses that we have within the region. And from this, we were able to assess which of these were actually impacted, or most likely, we made some assumptions, most likely to have been impacted based around some of those known assumptions, based on the research that we had actually undertaken previously. We then took that information and reviewed that against consumption data for these customers, which identified the three main segments that you can actually see here in front of you. To the best of our knowledge, again, sort of based on the research that we had done and the customers that we'd spoken to, we really sort of believe that the first two would most likely fall into that small business category, and is the bulk of those customers, the 11,000 customers that we've spoken to previously. For major accounts, we were actually back on the low and high volume. So with that, we've designed, we already did offer a range of options, but they were limited, to be honest. It was things like payment extensions. We also had payment extensions, and we had there was payment arrangements as well. What we did do, though, in response to this, and I'm going to touch on this shortly, we extended a lot of the service offering that we provided for residential customers also to these customers as well. So I'll talk to that in a moment. For major customers, we took a slightly different approach in that we also extended the same service offer, but instead of applying a proactive approach with those customers, we very much worked with our key account managers, and they continued to work with those major customers as they had done previously. So at this point, what I'm going to cover off next is going to be just around what it is we did provide in terms of that service response. But I thought this actually might be a good time to pause if anyone did have any questions at this stage, just particularly in regards to the research that we had undertaken.
So feel free to raise your hand, put something in chat, or if you'd like to just take yourself off mic and introduce yourself, you can do that as well.
Jane, it's Matt Mollett from South East Water. Hello and thanks for presenting. I just wanted to ask about those property types that you mentioned that have obviously been important in helping you segment. Are those property types standardised? Are they from a third party, or are they classifications that you've always had on your system?
I believe, Matt, it's a blend of both. So we use Velocity as our billing system. We've had it for some time and it's been customised. So yeah, certainly what I've been advised is it is a bit of a blend of both.
Yeah, thanks.
I wonder if other people have got any reflections on other approaches that they're taking to try and identify or classify small business customers. Jane, you mentioned that was something you initially struggled with. You've come up with these particular options. I'm interested, do other people have reflections on that or their approach that they've taken?
I just want to say to you, Jane, defining small business is just ridiculous. So there's so many different definitions out there. And as you say, the ATO talk about the financial one. We at Aspefio, we sort of even include anyone that employs under 100 people. But back when I did my MBA, which is one I love, is anyone that's owner operated. And I really like that because it shows that the person is the one making the decision. It's not a technical definition or anything like that, but it's the way I think about it is the person who's owning it is the one that's actually making a decision on those things. Oh, we're not going to open up tomorrow. That really makes a decision, but it's a bane of everyone. They're ABS, ATO, ASIC, I think even. Everyone has a different definition, and one day we'll get it right.
Mm. And I like that, Ruth, because I think that builds on when you presented it really, in a way, it humanises this challenge, and it really adds that human face to this. And even picking up on what I was saying earlier with the use of things around the personas and the journey mapping and all the rest of it, they're all tools designed to build that understanding and a level of empathy too.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Mm. Other thoughts or reflections?
I could keep moving, Lucy.
Yeah, please do. Great.
All right. Okay, so service response. So with all of that, so we've leveraged what we've got, we've done some research, we've spoken to customers, we've, gone through that process. From that, we come forth with the segmentation, and we've built on what we already had and extended that to those customers. So this is where that breaks that down in more detail. Extensions to pay, help in setting up instalment plans. We had this already. We had this for our business customers, but again, we looked at, well, what else can we do? So the third and the fourth there. So with regards to the flexible payment plans, so the arrange and save, that was something that was new that we introduced. We already had that in place for residential customers. We extended that to business. In addition to that, trade waste customers was an area that we really focused in on as well. So for trade waste, we also offered additional financial support, which included a reduction of trade waste and backflow fees. So that was something new that we've put in as a bit of a temporary measure at this stage with that particular customer segment. In addition to that, we've also been actively promoting the services that we provide. So every opportunity and every touch point we've had, we're out there, and there's some examples here up on the screen that you can see that sort of showcases what that looks like. But essentially, all notices, all bills, SMSs, like many of us, I would expect, do have this information. That there in front of you, the support and payment assistance, that flyer, that's included. It's an A4 that's included with every bill and reminder notice that goes out. That covers a range of information. It also highlights in there what we've got specifically for business customers as well. But essentially, that really is an opportunity for us, and we also push out across other platforms, social media, etc. So that active promotion is something that we continue to roll out and revise and even freshen up. So we're about to come out with some new brochures, and whilst the information will be mostly the same, it's really designed to, I guess, I think it might be becoming a little bit of white noise, so to speak, for lack of a better term. So it's really designed to keep that a bit of a cut through and keep it a little bit fresh. So it's just a way that we can continually revise that. So that's what we're doing in that space. And a really important part for us is around our proactive customer contact. So for all customers, and the small business customers, and particularly even those that do fall into that low to sort of medium consumption segmentation that I've focused on before, we are undertaking proactive customer contact, and that is really based upon certain triggers that we're seeing. So for an example, this could be that a bill hasn't been paid on time. It could be that we're seeing a change in payment pattern, that type of thing. But there are a certain set of triggers then prompts us to go, well, hang on, let's reach out to this customer and give them a phone call. So that's that. I'm going to cover that off in next, actually, if we have a look to the next screen. So this is what it looks like. Our proactive service model, it's been in place nearly, probably about 5 months, and actually Cameron that spoke earlier, he leads this up with also support of a broader team behind him as well, and I think we've got a couple of them with me today, which is good. So this proactive service model is in place. It's really there to enable early customer engagement and providing an increased level of support. So we've got a number of different elements to this. You notice we've got the inbound as well as the outbound. So the proactive outbound calling, it's been a bit of a test and learn approach for us, and it's evolving as we do learn more about the outcomes and the customer outcomes and what's working and what's not. You know, in October, for instance, we actually contacted all up, it was around over 1,500 customers. And that is all customers, but includes small business within that. And that is based on those sort of triggers that I mentioned before. So other triggers, just to provide, I guess, a bit of context for residential, could be that those customers who, you know, if we use, Ruth, your definition before, potentially could also be a small business owner. But yeah, so those customers that have registered, maybe, as I said before, it could be that they've got a change in payment pattern. It could be that they've got a concession card. In addition to that, we're also now sort of branching out and focusing on different regions. So we're looking at where, based on the interactions that we've had, where we're seeing the most, I guess, demand and uptake in different suburbs and regions. And therefore we use that as an indicator, well, maybe that's an area that we might hone in on a little bit further. So, for example, in October, we had, interestingly, actually, we had quite a strong uptake in an area of Geelong in Newtown, which was interesting. But outside of that, it's some of the more areas that you would have expected as well. So, and that's sort of around your Corio and Orlane. But that just gives you a little bit of an example. But there are other areas outside the Geelong that also are showing a bit of a trend, which indicates that there is a demand for the support. So we use all of those insights to really guide what it is that we do actually in this space. So for small business specifically though, since June, we have actually attempted to contact up to around, I think it's around 3,000 of those customers. And from that, we've had a range of outcomes. You know, the uptake in the small business space has been relatively lower than what's expected, to be really honest. And even before, Ruth, when you were chatting, it prompted me to sort of really think, what more could we be doing? And maybe, you know, there's an opportunity, and something that we're already looking to do actually, there's an opportunity for us to even review some of the services and the products that we actually provide, and just making sure that they are meeting those needs and so forth. So yeah, but anyway, it's a constant evolving space, but that just gives you a bit of insight into some of that proactive work that we are doing. So just bring that to our next slide. So in terms of outcomes, so this is a little bit tricky to read, but I'm just going to touch on the key points. But what we're really seeing is that payment extensions are much more popular with small business customers compared to Arrange and Save, and that's what I touched on earlier. The Arrange and Save, which is the new one, which gives, that we've brought across from residential to small business, this is where it provides roughly, it's about a 20% discount on their bill. It's interesting, well, we're finding it interesting anyway, that, as I said, the uptake on this is a little bit lower than what we had expected. So in response to that, we're actually about to undertake a review around how we could redesign that to better suit people's needs. So that's about to kick off, and the team, and Cam actually and the team are about to kick that off shortly. So it's an opportunity for us to again check in with some of those small business customers to really make sure that we are at best meeting the mark. So that's just where we're at with that one. In regards to aged debt, which is also a bit of an indicator of obviously customers being able to pay their bills. For non-res customers, which you can see there, it did spike up at the beginning of the second lockdown, so around June, as you can see. But however, since then, it's sort of tapered off, and it has been easing off since August. But again, it's a bit tricky to really grasp, I guess, how much of that is, you know, through other support that's been provided by stimulus packages and so forth. And referencing back even with what you were saying before, Ruth, I fully expect, obviously, that once some of those other support options do potentially dry up or shift, that we might can sort of see a bit of a variance in that trend. But at this stage for us, it's a bit of a watch this space. So it's just, but for now though, it's an interesting indicator that we're seeing there. The last slide that I've got that I really wanted to touch on, and I mentioned this earlier, and it sort of does complete a bit of a picture for us. And then finally, it's just sort of highlighting a range of other initiatives that we are doing or undertaking to support small business. So this includes our water grants program. So this is to be launched. It's new. not even launched yet, so hold the press, launch next month, with the aim for the grants. Well, the aim for the grants really is to provide, there is an element of financial support. Obviously, businesses would apply for the grants, and the primary aim of those is to achieve permanent water savings, as well as stronger partnerships and alternate water sources. Can't speak now, as well as education as well. Following on from that, we've got the water efficiency program. So our current programs commenced, the main current programs commenced in June this year. And this includes around 70 business customers. Some of these are large, but most of it is small business, and it does cover off a range of different businesses and within different industries. So for instance, you've got sporting ground maintenance, manufacturing, you've got landscapers in there. And we're also doing some work with the Colac Rural Farming Community on farm leak detection program, which is using data loggers on water meters, which is sort of really helping to prevent leakages and so forth. So that's proven to be quite a success in that space. The next one there, which is also a fairly new initiative. Well, it is new. We've only just signed this one up this month. So it's working with the Big Four Holiday Park in Apollo Bay. With that, they're our biggest water user within that area, which is also on a very small supply system. So the aim of this project is really to support the park to become as efficient as practical, basically, whilst maintaining the current guest experience. So it's early days, but we are expecting that consumption monitoring, leak detection, water efficiency improvements could actually save that particular Big Four probably up to around 30k per year. So obviously that's through water efficiency. So yeah, so that's it's an exciting project. It's a good one to test and learn and potentially roll out more broadly. The next one there around WaterWise program. So that's a partnership with local government authorities within the region. I think we've got about 5 there. And with that, we're looking to really identify and target again water efficiency outcomes and working with sort of open space recreation areas and other community run facilities. And just finally, I put this one in here. This is around uplifting the number of mobile and email contact details that we do actually have for all of our customers. The aim of this initiative is obviously to increase it. Whilst it's not directly related to customer support, it's seen as really critical, as it'll enable us to engage with those customers more effectively. And it'll also provide customers more options in terms of how they engage with us. So some other initiatives that we've got in the pipeline that'll go live, for instance, we've got an SMS click to extend. So someone actually doesn't want to talk to us, which that's fine, we're cool with that, but it gives them an option just to click and extend by SMS. So that's something that an initiative that we're looking to go live Q3, so the start of next calendar year. But in addition to that, we're also introducing a number of other easy to pay sort of options and that type of thing. But yeah, so there's a number of broader benefits with that one, but I just thought I'd throw that in as well. So that really is that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today, but I would love to hear some questions, insights from the group around what other people may have experienced in this space. You know, to put it out there, like it is, yeah, I mean, we're always looking to improve. You know, I wish that our uptake for customer support options was a little bit higher with small business, which makes me think that maybe we're not quite meeting the mark. I'm not quite sure, but it was very thought-provoking what you were saying, Ruth, and certainly for us, and as I said, we are reviewing some of our service offerings in that space, but really keen to hear from the broader group around any other insights or lessons or that they might have, and be prepared to share as well, and any other questions that people might have.
So do open it up to the group. Feel free to raise a hand, feel free to put something in chat. Feel free to take yourself off mute and raise a question for Jane. Certainly, I'm very interested in your reflections on the frequency, the take up that other businesses have been seeing. Hannah, would you like to put that? Oh, okay, sorry, I'll just start off. I've got a few have dropped in here, so one at a time. Alison, perhaps you can take yourself off mute and just pose that too. And introduce yourself. Sorry.
Hello, Jane Salison from Yarra Valley here. We've been entertaining a click to extend or a click to pay or a click to do something for a long time, and initially it was going to default to our credit card offering, which was cost prohibitive if we were inadvertently moving people off a low or no cost channel onto a credit card one. So just really interested, is that something that you've developed in-house, or it's not an issue because it's just an extend? That two-way thing is for us, I think.
So it is. Oh, sorry, Alison, you cut that.
No, go.
Okay. The beauty of Zoom. No, so they're both custom-built solutions. So we've done a bit of custom-built work, IT work at Barwon Water, and this is an extension of that. So yeah, so both we've got, well, the click to extend will be custom built into a platform that we've already got. So the team have already started to design and develop that one up. The other one that we're doing as well, which relates into the SMS channel, is the click to pay SMS. And again, that links in with, the front end design of that is again custom built through the same sort of technology, same solution.
Jane, I'm just mindful of time, so I might just summarise Hannah's question from Colaburn Water. When COVID first hit, small business customers were only asking for debt waiver, didn't want payment plans, and it made it very hard to help. And Kay raised a question. She thanked you for the presentation. And is there a cap on the maximum amount of the water grants program? And what is the application process?
So Darren is with us today, and I'm looking at Darren. Hello, Darren. Would you be able to help out in answering that question?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Good presentation, Jane, too. So the business grants program, essentially it's going to be, we'll fund $2,000 for every megalitre of water saved, and with no cap particularly on it, although we have a budget, obviously, that we've set that we want to spend over the next 3 years. So at this stage, and the application process, because we're aiming at all of our large users and anyone else that's shown interest in the last 18 months, and we'll be sending them out the guidelines. But essentially, we're working on $2,000 per megalitre of water saved.
Right. Thank you, Darren.
No problem.
You're back on mute, Lucy.
Sorry, thanks for that, Jane. Just a couple more questions have come through the chat, so I might just take them offline and put them to you, Jane, and we can include your responses as part of the wrap-up coming up. Because there's just a question that I'm really keen for people to reflect on, and then Ruth and Jane, if we could hear some comments from you. So I'm just going to put it in the chat. So it's really a broader question, and so I invite people just to have a bit of a think around what are the next steps around small business support and recovery. And it really can be in the context of your business, might be in the context of the Victorian water sector, it might actually be advice for Barwon Water. Everything's on the table, but if you just take a moment to reflect and start popping your thoughts and reflections in the chat, and then Ruth and Jane, I'll invite you to share some of your thoughts on those as well.
Do you want me to speak to that one, Lucy?
Yeah, you've got some.
Yeah, no, look, I know I've sort of put forward a couple of my views, obviously, when I spoke, but I think one of the biggest around trying to anticipate what support is needed, and how we continue to try and, I guess, be on the front foot of that. And it's interesting, while we talked about the importance of small business pivoting and the need to pivot and be agile in that respect, I think just as much on us as a sector to also follow, I guess, a similar way with regards to how we can just ensure that we are trying to balance the needs of the business, but importantly, the needs for the customer as well. So it's a bit of a tricky one. And I just think that, so that I would certainly see that is a critical with regards to providing that support as from a sector perspective and from a water authority perspective, a site perspective. So just how we can best work together even as a sector on that front would be certainly worthwhile exploring.
Added that note to the chat there, Jane. From Alison, I think it would be important from Alison from Yarra Valley Water to be agile in our approach of developing new solutions, offering as we get greater understanding of how small business customers have been affected. A lot closed their doors in Melbourne in the lockdown. What the future looks like for them is going to be concerns or otherwise. We don't yet know. I did sort of see a graph around the failure to fail of small businesses. There would usually be a certain failure rate across a normal year, and that hasn't happened this year. So what the impact of that is. Ruth, have you got some reflections you could share before?
Yeah, well, when you said businesses haven't failed, well, we don't know yet. So obviously they've all been propped up so far, so they will fail because there's not realistic figures at this stage. I so agree with the agility and being able to adapt. I really hope that out of this, small businesses have learned what they're good at, learned what their strengths are, and learned how to predict moving forward. I think for our other businesses, supporting a water business, supporting small business is really having that conversation, that communication about what they're needing. And I think it just comes down to when I talked about those frontline people, when they're talking to a small business owner and walking through it. So what does your day look like? I go in and I empty in the bins and I do this, and I think value-added things. So what do you spend? I love those idea of how do you save money on efficiency. I think small business owners would be interested in that. What ways can we just save on our bills? When are we spending on our bills? What's cheaper to do that? Can we do washing up differently that's going to save money if we're going to do it like this? Remember when all those lights came in? They did that, and there was a program, change all the lighting and all the rest of it. That was a huge uptake about what you can do with all the lighting. I think understanding a business, what they're doing and how they're using is so important when you're talking to someone. A small business doesn't want to be dumped in with everyone else. They want someone at the other end that just understands them.
Thank you so much. Big thank you to both Ruth and Jane. So I guess just for a moment, if you could take yourselves off mute and just give them a round of applause. I know that Dominic Schipano was very disappointed he couldn't join today's session, and we certainly hope to work with Dominic in the future. Today we heard about many of the challenges facing operators of small businesses, and I really hope you've taken away some practical options and solutions, particularly as we collectively take our next steps to the recovery and in the future. So what really stood out to me is what we need to support is that you've spoken at Ruth about why we need to support small businesses and family enterprise. You've spoken, had a nice discussion around definitions of small business and owner operators. We've talked about the transferability of many of the skills that water business staff will already have, and understanding the audience. So it's not just the category of the customer, but it's a type of business and how they might be affected by the coronavirus. Understanding what other support is available and what support you as a business are best placed to provide, and that providing support is not necessarily opening up a floodgate. So directly after today's meeting, I'll circulate a post-event survey. We really appreciate when people are able to give us that feedback. It does help shape our future sessions. Today's materials will also be circulated in the coming week. I'd like to thank all the presenters who've joined us over the workshop series: Natalie Davis from City West Water, Claire Haynes and Jenna Bishop from Goulburn Valley Water, Tiffany White from Yarra Valley Water, Hannah Cook from Colaburn Water, along with our external guests, Professor Liam Smith from Behaviour Works and Ting Yuan from the Department of Land, Water and Planning. And a big thank to all of you for attending today's session and for those who've attended past workshops as well. Of course, I hope that the workshop has been useful for you, and I know that the team have certainly appreciated having a chance to connect and hear about the issues that you're grappling with. We're currently working on our review of the national principles and the water customer service codes, and we'll provide you with updates of those once those dates are locked in. So, and that means dates around consultation, of course. In the meantime, enjoy any new freedoms that you are recently attaining. Stay well over the end of year break, and we will see you in the new year, if not sooner. So thank you once again.
Thank you.